Good evening, all of you. And I shall start today with the first chapter, that is your political theory as has been explained in the module. Now, few things I would like to tell you before I start with this module. My voice is clear to all of you. That's why I have kept this apparatus before. Otherwise, in the middle, it would say that some technical issues might arise because of which. And you all can see this. You all can see this, right? Okay, okay, fine. That was just the. Uh, Now back. You can't see it, right? So it was just for the experiment purpose, because before I start with the slideshow, there is something that I would like to explain to all of you. Now, what we have to explain here and what we have to see here, that we are starting with political theory, first chapter itself, and almost every year there is a question. Today, when I end the class, and we'll see one of the questions that was asked in the exam, and we'll see the answer also. So this portion, this political theory portion, is very, the name itself says theory, so it is very theoretical. There is nothing like no, you cannot it's like what you called undiluted theories are given here, that this is what political theory aims at, this is what the part of political theory is, so on and so forth. If you have read anything about it, it's nothing but theory and so political philosopher or a theorist or a political thinker has given this theory. This is what every time it says. So one thing with theory is that it has this capacity to put all of us to sleep. Theories at times become very boring, but we cannot help it because we have to deal with it. This is given in our exam syllabus, so there is nothing that can be done. On my part, I'll try to make it more interesting, and the only option I see is to how to make a completely theoretical or a completely static part that has largely remained very less elements of evolution are here, which means right from the time of Plato to currently, if I can say, uh, Andrew Heywood, the approach has not been drastically different. So that brings in an element of monotony into this entire module. This is the only monotonous module in your syllabus, and I'm starting with it. The rest everything is damn interesting, trust me. So how do we make it more interesting and more understandable? What I can do is I can quote live examples. So if there is a theory which says that, and I give you an example which collaborates or corresponds to that theory, I think the boredom will be gone. Rest, you have to read it, you have to revise it, and examples, of course, you can, if you understand the theory very well, if you understand what is actually this political theory all about, then you can create examples of your own that like I'll do in front of you right now. These examples are not in books. So let us start with political theory, and I have kept one text which means the 10-year question paper, which the UPSC Political Science and International Relation Hindi and English medium, which is sold here in Delhi. So every year, as I told you, there has been hardly not been a year when they have not asked you on. Like last year, they asked what is resurgence of political theory. The very first question, you know, the resurgence of political theory. It was asked for 10 marks, and again, 2018 they have asked decline of political theory. So in 2018, political theory was on decline, and in 2019 there has been a resurgence of political theory. So you can understand that themes are fixed, areas are fixed, literature is fixed, context at times it changes. That is it. So let us now again start with this. All of you can see it, I guess, the PPT. So this is the first slide. There are many philosophers sitting here. We will learn about each one of them. Not today, but someday. But these are the people who gave us political theory. Now, what is political theory? When I ask you what exactly is political theory, so let us proceed to the next slide and see what is political theory. Theory is like a blank check whose value is its utility and the way it's put into practice, is what Kathleen says. Kathleen is a very famous political philosopher. So, what is it trying to tell us? That theory is like a blank check. You know what is a blank check? You wish you get a blank check, right? So blank check is something you need to fill the amount and the person to whom it will who can encash it. which means it is open to interpretations, right? Uh, the amount that I would fill in a blank check would differ to from you. The name that I would fill will differ. So there is again interpretations of a blank check. So what Kathleen is telling us that what a political theory actually means depends on who is explaining it. What is the purpose of that political theory? Which is the clientele at which the theory is aimed at, right? So for an American, same theory would not mean the exact same interpretation as an Indian, right? So he's saying that theory is like a blank check, and this is the view of Kathleen, which means it varies from person to person, individual to individual. Theory about anything is an abstract generalization. Thomas Jenkins, another famous political thinker, a political philosopher, he says that it's an abstract generalization. Now, you all know what is generalization, right? What is generalization? Can someone tell me? Just one line. What is generalization? No one. You don't know what is generalization. Come on. Living in India, you don't know what is generalization. Fitting people into single basket. Yes. Seeing not in great detail. Blanket approach, same for everyone. Using the same yardstick for all things. Yes. So that is what generalization is. That all Indians are dash dash dash. You can fill the adjective you want. Of course, good adjective. Today is Independence Day. Happy Independence Day to all of you. Yes, taking a view and assuming it to be true for everything, similar to stereotyping. Yes, Santosh, you remember those NCRT lessons, right? So yes, sixth class NCRT when we talked about the stereotypes. Yes, generalization means that you are putting all the eggs in the same basket. Stereotype, prejudice, same thing. So theory about anything is an abstract generalization. Now, why Jenkins is saying so? How can a theory? Because we will see later on that what a theory actually, with the content of the theory, it tries to generalize. I'll give you an example that there's a theory, a very famous theory, which says that mm, lack of parental care during adolescence can lead to a rise in lawlessness when the child turns into adult. You think it will work 100%? Nothing works 100% in social studies, social science, right? Okay, okay. Answer. This is the answer. Okay, most of the cases, even if works in majority of the cases, majority to me means 50 by 2 plus 1 is simple majority for me. So 49% cases if it does not work, isn't it a generalization? That is what Jenkins says. Then when you tend to theorize everything, you are generalizing everything. And the problem with theorists is that they write a theory and they expect the world to fit into that theory. Okay, it does not work that way. Whatever you have written is not Ved Vakya or Brahma Vakya that it will always fall, it will always come true. You have written something based on your experience and your own understanding of contemporary world around you. It cannot be. No theory is eternal. Please keep it in mind. No theory is eternal. It has to change. Okay, and no thinker can be eternal. Every thinker, we will criticize every thinker, whether Western political thinker or Indian political thinker. There are limitations to every individual. No thinker is God, but some followers think that the thinker is God. That's not the case. So it's an abstract generalization, is what Jenkins is rightly saying. Next, you see crystallization of a point of view. Karl Popper. Again, this name you have to remember. We will. Okay, it's like average. Okay, Karl Popper is a very famous political scientist. We have to keep quoting him again and again. We will see him in details when we will see Western political thinker. He has given a very reassuring commentary on Western political thought as well. That will come later. But he says that crystallization of a point of view. You know what is crystallization? Consolidation of a point of view. That so and so thing is happening for a long time. You keep saying it, you keep towing the same line, and you come up with a theory. Right? The Arya invasion theory, which has been proved to be wrong. Uh, Recent clinical research has debunked the Aryan invasion theory. But right from the English, the British, to Romila Thapar, to R.S. Sharma, they kept peddling this Aryan invasion theory until the DNA test proved to be otherwise. So what was that? That was a crystallization, right? You keep repeating it, and then something novel happens, and the theory goes for a walk. So again, Karl Popper is very right, and we have to study Karl Popper in details when we'll come to Western political thought. So, three views from three scholars. right? Again, I have cautioned you, do not use your subject scholar in other paper, GS and essay. So don't use Kathleen Jenkins and Karl Popper when you are writing that you are writing some heavy quotations. No, I'll tell you which quotations you can use in your other paper, not these ones. This is just three different scholars who are telling us what political theory could be, right? Now, moving forward from here, it is an electric subject that draws upon a variety of disciplines. Norman Barry, another very formidable name in political science. This is something that I discussed yesterday, that it is a very interdisciplinary approach political science has. That is why Barry is saying that political theory will have is an electric subject. Now, what do you mean by electric subject? I'm told most of you are engineers. Can you tell me why would he say that it's an electric subject? Come on, I expect answers. What is electric subject? Rapidly changing, very dynamic, intrudes many, huge and has vast applications, sudden excitement, open-ended. Actually, that's the very true answer, that it's rapidly changing. Electricity is something in motion, right? You know the composition of electricity, right? So it is a very electric subject which draws upon various disciplines. Like I told you yesterday, it has geography, it has history, it has psychology, it has sociology, it has economics, of course, it has polity, right? So it draws upon all these different subjects, different discipline cannot be unanimous on a particular topic. For an economist, revenue would matter. For a sociologist, the impact on society would matter, right? So if an economist were to advise the government, he would say that go for this plan because this will give high revenue to the state. A sociologist would say, no, no, go for this plan. It will have very positive impact on the society irrespective of the revenue you get. So you see again different subjects, and when these different subjects come together, Norman Barry is telling us that they approach, when the different interdisciplinary approach is followed, then we get a political theory. Now I'll again give you an example later on how he's saying so, because he will we will see that political theory is all pervading. See, political theory is not strictly confined to politics, because what is if I ask you what is the purpose of politics, or what is politics, again the same thing, what is politics or the purpose of politics, please let me know to be heard. You are hearing me, I'm not doing any politics right now. Right now, okay, we'll see these things. A lot of questions in the initial phases are not very good. Now you see, a body of thought that seeks to evaluate, explain, and predict political phenomena. A body of thought, a line of thinking that seeks to evaluate. Now, these words are very important. These words are very, very important. How do you evaluate? When you see a certain, and what political phenomena? What is a political phenomena? Jawaharlal Nehru was prime minister from 1947 to 1964 until he died. Your NCERT class 12 talks about one party dominance. That was a political phenomena. Then post Nehru's demise, Shastriji was prime minister for a very short time. Then Indiraji was prime minister. So it then talks about coalition politics. I'm quoting from NCERT's class 12. That was a political phenomena, right? So evaluate. I told you two political phenomena, from one party dominance to multi-party coalition era, right? From Janata Party to VP Singh to Chandrasekhar to Gujral to Vajpayee. Okay, so that was again a political phenomena. So evaluate. Evaluate means what is the impact? If this happens, then what is the impact? And if that happens, then what is the expense? Explain why this is happening. Why Congress was formidable from 47 to 64. Can someone give me an answer, some points? Why Congress, there was a one party system? See, political science has to be interactive. I cannot just go on parroting theories. You have to connect it. Tell me a very basic question which we have to study in detail in Indian government and politics. One by one, one by one. I have got topic 7, 8 questions. No strong opposition. Okay, Suman, good. Dominance during freedom struggle. Krishna, good. No alternative. Anirudh. Hari Krishna, goodwill. Congress was started with fighting for freedom, pre-independence effect, people's sentiment. Most of the leader belong to freedom struggle. It had all classes of. Okay, fair enough. All of you are correct. One more. Identity-based politics did not take a foothold. Hemant, stop words. Identity-based politics. We have to study identity-based politics. And if the charisma of Nehruji is working, it is anything but identity-based politics. It is identity-based politics. It has always been into India, just that it keeps metamorphizing in different shapes. So Later on, we will talk about what is actually identity-based politics. Anti-Jinnah sentiment, not exactly. So we can leave that. And what was that? Should I? Someone attempting to draw something. Okay. So explain means they will tell you the reason. Like I asked you the question that why there was Congress dominance, you gave the answer. That is explaining a political phenomena, right? Explanation. So evaluation whether rule of Congress one party dominance for 2 to 3 decades was good or bad, or whatever it was, whether it was good or bad, let us not go into that debate. But these things happen. Explain why it was so, because Congress was not only a party, Congress had a legacy of freedom movement. It was a movement actually. Congress started as a movement, right? Then most of the leaders were connected to freedom struggle. No opposition at all. There was absolutely no opposition. The second party was Communist Party of India, which hardly got 50 seats at that time, not even 50 seats. So no opposition, and people were emotionally connected to Congress, right? So this is how we explain a political phenomenon. Now predict. How would we predict a political phenomenon? Right? That this trend is happening, and this trend would last until, okay. So post Nehruji's demise, we see factions emerging in Congress, and this is how coalition politics come. Because you will study it that Congress O was formed, Moraji Desai left, this again Janata Party. So all these things are predictions that if this happens, if a charismatic tall leader goes, factions might emerge, right? So this is what political theory also does. It will evaluate why a political phenomena is happening. It will explain and it will predict. You got everything? You want me to give another example from some other country? I think this is sufficient, right? So moving on to the next point, political theory is a theory about what is political. Okay, what is political? I say it says according to Sabine. Again, we have to refer to Sabine. It's anything about politics or relevant to politics. So Sabine rightly says that anything which is relevant to politics. And if you attempt to define politics, if I ask you what is politics, you all tried and you all were not wrong at all. But the attempt to influence masses through position of power is politics too. That you why do you attempt to, if your aim is just to serve people, you can be a social service, you can go into social service, you can join police, you can become an administrator, which all of you are trying to. Okay, interview ka favorite answer that I want to serve my country and my society, right? So politicians also say the same thing, right? But they want it through position. So you want to make an impact through public office, and when it is elected public office, then it is 100% politics, right? Even the leader of opposition in India, it's also a political post, right? So anything relevant about politics, which means there can be something that is related to politics, but not exactly politics. I'll tell you something. Uh, I don't know whether you have heard about Nazrul Hassan. I guess you have not. Leave it. Uh, there is often an attempt. There is often an attempt to, you know, uh, canvas Indian history. What I'm telling you is that there are views. Okay, there is a Marxist view. There is a modernist view. There is a postmodernist view, and there is a rightist view. So when government changes, when there is a regime change, then there are allegations that they are trying to rewrite the history. They are trying to paint the history from red to saffron or maybe to some other color. So what is this? Again, education is not politics, but it is relevant to politics. Did you understand this point or not? All of you, please tell me. How something relevant to politics is also politics? An attempt to canvas history would be nothing but politics. Okay, so politics is what politics does, and it goes beyond its own realm. That is what I will tell you. Next point we see an overview of what the political order is all about. What is political order? Order, the perfect translation in, I can only translate it in Hindi. Order means vyavastha. You understand what is vyavastha? Law and order, kanun vyavastha, we say. So political order is all about. If you take a overview of political order, if we can say that India is a parliamentary form of democracy, which is which is running according to its constitution that was given to us post independence by Constituent Assembly. and every 5-year elections. So this is the political order, right? Then there is a federal structure, a chief minister with his cabinet sitting in states in the assembly, and a prime minister with his cabinet sitting in the Parliament of India at central level. Then there is further democratic decentralization in the form of municipalities and panchayats. So this is the political order, right? There are two houses. All these are political order. So if you give an overview and how elections are conducted, there is an independent constitutional body, election commission, which oversees it. So everything, this is what? This is political order. Some question. Yes, absolutely, Sumana. Very good question. Sumana Kasturi uh, has asked, does the attempt of Hitler to peddle anti-Jew sentiment come under relevance to politics? Does citizenship count as? Absolutely 100% it will. Very good question. I'm glad you are able to understand and form your own example. Now, anti-Zionist movement. Have you heard about it, Sumana? What was that? That was again an identity politics based on ethnicity. Yes, Arab state also. Very good, Hemant. Very good. Good, good. This is identity politics. This is again, it's an attempt to politicize. How else would Hitler have come to power? If he did not blame failure of Germany, the dismal state of Germany, on a community which was prospering like anything. Are you aware of this or not? Jews were the most prosperous people in Germany even after First World War. Are you aware of this? Jews everywhere are very prosperous. Even in US, they are major. We'll come to Israel Palestine. See again. We'll come to these things. Israel Palestine. You have to study this. Very much a part of optional itself. Let us hold it here. So it was an attempt to capture office by spreading paranoia by the Nazis. Okay, so of course it will come. Good. Answer, your explanation and your example is very to the point. Can we understand that any attempt in the process to get power in politics by influencing behavior? Yes, you can understand Krishna like this. So you understood what is political theory and what is politics. Okay. So these are the lines that you have to remember, and questions won't be direct. Questions we'll see today, the question what they have asked. This is just an introduction. They will never going to ask what is political theory. See the question papers from 2008. I told you in 2008 the syllabus of optional changed. It has still remained the same as we are talking 2008 से अभी तक वही है syllabus. So they have never asked what is political theory. No, that's a very juvenile question. But then in order to understand what we are to study right now, we have to get a firm grip on what we have talked about. That's why I told you these things in so much detail. Now let us move forward. Theory comes from Greek term theoria. You will see a lot of Roman and Greek in political science because yes, they have influenced the world political order. Of course, India also has, and that you will see in IPG, that is Indian Political Thinkers. So theory comes from Greek word theoria, that means a well focused mental look taken at something in a state of contemplation. What is contemplation? When you are deeply pondering over something, that is called contemplation, brainstorming with the intention to grasp or understand it. Right? So, what is theory? Well focused mental look taken at something in a state of contemplation with the intention to grasp or understand it. So, that is what political theory does. What were the three words? Predict, explain, and third one, please tell me, evaluate. Forgot. So evaluate, explain, and predict. If you are able to evaluate, explain, and predict a particular phenomena, rest assured you have understood it very well, right? So that is what theory does, and this is how the term theoria, that is the actual, it's a Greek word. From there, the word theory comes. Theory implies both science and philosophy. So we have seen what is science. Okay. Can you remember? Can you recall what is science? We saw it yesterday. I gave you a detailed explanation between science, the difference between science and social science. I'm not asking for that differentiation. I'm asking you what is science. Remember our Agni missile example. Knowledge of any subject in true and systematic manner is science. What is philosophy? What is philosophy then? Science, you all know. What is philosophy? No. Listen to this. You know what is PhD? It's a degree. What is the full form? Doctorate of Philosophy. Philosophy is abstract theory. Okay, doctorate in philosophy. You're right. It's actually doctorate of philosophy or doctorate in philosophy. But tell me something. Uh, there are PhD in English. There are PhD in economics. There are PhD in political science. I'm telling you, there are PhD in physics, mathematics, engineering. Management. Where is the philosophy? Where is the philosophy in physics? How come a person acquires PhD in philosophy, physics, or in English? Now listen to this. Every subject has a philosophy. Okay, I got the answers. Now please listen. Every subject, Venkat has given the right answer. Research in that subject. Research in that subject. Deep study in different views. Okay. So research in that subject. Every there is a limit to every subject. Whatever we know about physics, we can actually confine it. Whatever we know about political science, every subject we can actually confine it. Maybe too much for us to do that, but it can be done. Okay, but what is not known, and someone goes into that very realm, that is called philosophy. Okay, that is called philosophy. Something that is undiscovered in that subject, which means trying to know the unknown. So that is what political theory also does. There is an approach which is proved by empirical evidence, and then there are certain assumptions and postulates which is not known, which people expect to be true. Okay, so that is why we are saying it has both elements of science and philosophy. When everything in a subject is covered, then the philosophy starts. Okay, philosophy starts where knowledge ends. Whatever your known sources of knowledge are, when they stop, then philosophy starts. That applies to subject, that applies to PhD, right? You discover something new in that subject, that's why you become a doctor. PhD people get doctor, right? Not that medical practitioner, but PhD people also have this doctorate. So that is what political theory also does, that it has the element of science and philosophy both into it. So there are certain assumptions which are not established by facts. There are certain patterns that are established by fact in political theory. Just remember these things. You don't have to mug up. You just need to understand very well. You can frame your answers. Theory helps us to understand what is happening and for guiding our political choices. So if you get a theory that this will happen, so if there will be too much of centralization of power, then maybe in far-flung areas, because India being such a big country, so many talukas and villages, so maybe if everything is run from Delhi, then things will not get completed, right? So this is again a theory. This says theory given against the centralization of power, that there has to be decentralization of power. Small units. That's why we went for the panchayats, and there was a constitutional amendment to this effect, the 73rd and 74th. So what we are studying here, that whatever understands, whatever makes us understand what is happening around us, and then we can take our informed political choices. Theory can help us in doing that. So when this form of government will come, this is what will happen, and when this party will come, this form of government will come. Presidential form, this will happen. Parliamentary form, this will happen. Leftists come, this will happen. Rightists come, this will happen. And centrists come, this will happen. So this is what theory tells us, that we can make an informed choice. We can make our priority list, and then we can go for it. Right. So of course there is a very much large utility of political theory, as we see here, because it helps us in making informed political choices. Aspects. Any question till now? Before I move to the aspect part, any question here? Come on. The introduction part, which I just discussed. Any point, any side, I can revisit that point. If you did not understand, ask. Nothing. Relevance of observation in political science. We have not discussed these things, Anirudh. Just political theory. What is the meaning? Please confine your questions to what we have discussed, because there is a plethora of things which we have to study. Observation helps you in jotting down what you know is correct, and then you can develop a pattern after that. I think this was a very simple stuff, so I don't think there will be much issue here. Now, aspects of political theory. What are the different aspects of political theory that we shall see here? Extends to realm of politics only. Okay, as I told you, even education will be part of politics, right? Even industrial policy. So when the leftists come, leftists everywhere in the world talk about what? Mazdoor, Garib Admi, right? Workers of the world unite is what Karl Marx said. They talk about the workers, right? So when the left comes, left will always try to empower more of trade unions, okay, all sort of unions, because they think that this is what people want and this is how the society could be run, and they will not be in favor of the capitalist. Nowhere in the world left is in favor of capitalist. Left means anti-capitalist. So you see, the industrial policy that will be made, the economic policy that will be made, will be guided by politics, right? So what is the realm of politics? Everything that is associated with it, because politics is the art. Politics, see, politics is a craft actually, not an art. Politics is a craft that is practiced by a politician, okay. Political theory helps in mastering that craft, at least theoretically, okay. So it extends to the realm of politics only. Methods that political theory adapts are description, explanation, investigation of political phenomena. We have already covered this point, but then again, description and explanation, that why such and certain thing is happening, what are the various other related minor aspects to this, and investigation of a political phenomena. How come Narendra Modi won a thumping majority in 2014? And how come he becomes the only non-Congress prime minister to have been re-elected with a more thumping majority from 282 to 303? That would be a political phenomena. And anyone who goes into explanation of this very phenomena would be taking help of certain political theory, which we shall do in Indian government and politics, which will, when we'll talk about one party phenomena, are we returning back to one party phenomena, or majoritarianism, as the Hindu often writes. So explanation, trying to explain a political phenomena after investigation, is also an aspect of political theory. Now, though its main concern is political, yet political theory explains politics in relation to social, economic, psychological and ecological, everything. I told you, social, even ecology. You see, there is a lot of environment politics going around. You know this. Uh, Not only in India, everyone in the world. Even in your prelims exam, there are so many questions asked about environment and ecology, because it is becoming very important. And if you have heard, you must have this Copenhagen and Kyoto and Paris and COP and Canton summits. You see what greenhouse gas effects are doing and how carbon credit politics and everything. So these things are inevitably linked with politics, right? So when there is an attempt to reconnect these things, again, another question. SDG goals. Okay. Yes, of course, SDG goals. Once they have asked this in your prelims, not SDG, MDG, Millennium Development Goals. There are 20 points. So they asked in prelims about this. So you see, apart from politics, I gave you an example of economic policy. I gave you an example of some other aspects also, and here we see other. So they are inadvertently linked with the political part. Now, moving on from here, it attempts to predict and explain political phenomena. Already explained this point to you. This is again an aspect. It will predict and explain. So it is often said, when the voter turnout is high in a Lok Sabha election or a Vidhan Sabha election, if the voter turnout is more than 75%, then it's like it is something called anti-incumbency. How many of you know the meaning of this term? Anti-incumbency? Correct. Shreyas, Ravi, and Krishna, all of you are correct. Nagasai, also, you are also correct. Yeah. Feeding against the ruling party. Feeding against the ruling party. So in 2004, there was anti-incumbency. That is why Congress was defeated. In 2014, was there anti-incumbency? Yes or no? Remember, the political theory tells us if there is an anti-incumbency, then the government will lose. In 2014, there was anti-incumbency. My question is, you are saying yes, all of you. Go on. How can anti-incumbency be in 2014? It was pro-incumbency. That is why BJP increased its seats. In 2004, it was anti. In 2014, it was pro-incumbency. See, this is what we are explaining, a political phenomena on the basis of a political theory. The anti-incumbency theory says, listen please carefully, that if there is anti-incumbency, the ruling party will lose. If there is pro-incumbency, the ruling party will return. If there is high voter turnout, 75% and above, which means they are very angry with the ruling party, they want to throw them out. Higher voter turnout not every time translates in the favor of ruling party. So these are political theories which are helped to explain, which help us to explain certain political phenomena. Okay. Ah, yeah, sorry, 2019. Yes, yes, 14 also there was. Right, 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 right. I just mix it up. Yes. 14 BJP came, Congress was defeated. Right, right, right. Okay, so you understood how theory corresponds to change in political phenomena. Nothing tough in here. Is it okay? Shall I move? Any questions here? Then please ask. Else I'll move. What is not political? What? In which case, Krishna? In which case? I did not understand your question. Of course, it is dealing with so many fields, and that is what the subject is all about. It deals. It's an interdisciplinary subject. So whatever change happens in anything, in any realm, in any walk of life, politics is attached to it. No, Ravi, no, more will not. I made a mistake that I said that in 2014 there was anti. Of course, there was anti. More percentage, yeah, more percentage of voter. Okay, more percentage of voter. It is believed by some theorists. I'm not saying it is true all the time. It has not empirical evidence does not suggest. Ravi, try to understand, and all of you. Some political theorists, some sociologists believe that if there is a higher political voter turnout, it shows anger towards the ruling party. Okay, people are very much fed up with the regime. That's why they want to throw it away. That's why they all are going to vote. This is what some political theorists say. I do not completely agree. You also should not completely agree. At times they want to save the government, that they are doing a human service. Let them be in the regime, continue in the regime. Both ways it can be true. So there is political theory corresponding to both sides of the argument. Okay, now you see, it includes attempt to understand what is political and to link political with non-political. As I always say, its scope is not limited to what it constitutes, but also covers the periphery. This is what I was telling you from all the time, that it is not limited to what it constitutes. Political theory might exclusively talk about politics, but its impact are also felt in its periphery, right? This is what we were this point, this paragraph can sum up what we have discussed right now. Correct. It is related with why and what of the institution of government and whole system in which government operates. Why and what? Why certain thing is happening and what is the reason for it? Okay, and whole system in which government operates. So clear cut summary of whatever we have discussed right until now. Now, evolution, political theory as we are seeing right now has not always existed like we are seeing it currently. Okay, there has been certain changes. Okay, that's on your screen. Ancient and medieval times, its concern was to recognize ethical goals of the state. We'll start with WPT once we are done with the different forms of political theory, and there you will see that Plato and Aristotle and even Descartes and Machiavelli, they have emphasized on religion, okay, ethical goals, whether connected to religion or non-religious ethics. So in medieval times also, uh, you will study about the divine right theory. What is the divine right theory? That the king would say that I have been sent by God to rule. Have you heard about it? Divine right theory, that I have been sent by God. I have been appointed by God. That's why I'm the king. So, and it is very ethical too. It is the subjects, the citizens of the particular state, they are supposed to follow the king's order because that is what ethics tell us. How can you defy someone who has been sent by God? So that was ancient and medieval time. The political theory main goal was ethical goals of the state. And it operates both ways, for the king also and for the subject also. So subject I mean citizen, the people living, they are supposed to obediently follow their king. King is supposed to be benevolent and work for the upliftment, for the betterment, for the development of its subjects. Plato, Aristotle insisted on function of state to establish justice. Now, state can do justice. Me and you cannot. Okay. So state is what? State is individual writ large. Again, we'll read the statement somewhere in WPT. So Plato and Aristotle will say that state is an all-pervading institution, an organization that will take call on the for the general welfare of people. Again, what was welfare in that time is different from what is welfare in our time. Contemporary welfare would not be same as the ancient Greek welfare. During medieval time, again it was associated with religion. Medieval era, rightly called the dark ages for Europe, because everything was dominated by the church in Europe. Medieval Europe is called dark Europe, dark age. From 7th century until 17th century, 1000 years, church used to dominate like anything, and church never liked anything that was not conferring to the status quo. Are you aware of this? I guess I've explained it somewhere. So church was very status quoist, and that is why there was nothing novel, nothing new emerging in Europe until Renaissance happened. So religion used to dominate because people will follow if religion says so, right? They won't follow if you tell this as an, is it the time when the Bible was not given to people? No, which form of Bible are you talking about? There is Old Testimony, there is New Testimonial, there is this Jewish Bible, there is Protestant Bible, there is Catholic Bible. Yeah, for some time Bible was not to be read by everyone. It's true. Church used to issue sin letters. Okay, so there were restrictions, lot of restrictions on people. Nothing new could emerge, and people were forced to follow it because everything was connected and legitimized by the religion. Church used to say he's a very good king, so whatever worst thing the king does, if the church is saying he's a good king, then he has to be a good king. You cannot defy that. Religion was important. In modern times, it was concerned with the functions of the state. Now you will study Renaissance in your history, so then you will study about Enlightenment era. Dark ages will be removed by Enlightenment when Renaissance will usher in. It's a kind of socio-economic changes. Change in status quo in every walk of life in Europe happened during 15th to 16th century. It lasted for almost 200 years. The next 200 years were Enlightenment eras from Dark Ages. So functions of state would drastically change. Okay, it will focus more on the welfare of individual rather than the welfare of the monarch and the state and the nobles. So state will come to the individual now, right? So function of state will change during modern times. Modern philosophers, modern political theorists will emphasize, of course, Santosh, kings and churches were addressed as supreme power. See, actually, church used to say that king is the supreme, and why he's supreme? Because I am telling you, and why I am telling you is true because I am the representative of God. Okay, so that is why in modern times this approach was challenged, that you cannot connect it with religion and call for a full stop, that there can be no alternative to it. There can be alternative. Why can't there be an alternative to it? Why can't we ask questions? So we witness in modern times from 17th century onwards that I'll come to it, Hari. I'll answer this. Role of state, of course, the role of state was keeping the monarch intact. Okay, no change in the political order. Modern times, role of state would be citizen centric. Correct. You see how the role of the state is changing, Hari? From monarch centric, from state centric, it is becoming citizen centric. It is becoming welfare centric. Okay, you understood? Hari Krishna. Classical political theory. Classical political theory is dominated by philosophy. And when I say classical political theory, it means what? Which one we are talking about? We are talking about this ancient Greeks. So it happened during, we see Socrates, we have to study Socrates. So there you will see in his writings, you will see in Socrates and Plato's, Aristotle's writing, the remnants of classical theory. And it aims at acquiring a reliable knowledge about matters that concerns people. Okay, that is what they do. And a politically inspired pursuit for a rational basis of action is what Socrates and Plato will talk about, and Aristotle. Socrates is the guru, his disciple is Plato. After Plato, his disciple is Aristotle, and Aristotle's disciple is Alexander. So three great gurus and one great warrior. Okay, so again in classic political theory, that the this common, what is common and basic unit of analysis that is will be emphasized. There's this term called body politic and real politic, which we shall understand later on. So I'm leaving this only point concerning body politic and real politic about classic political theory, because that's not the right time to discuss these things. But it relates itself. What we need to understand here for classical political theory is that it relates itself to the political whole. The entirety, the entire thing is political here, and it lays emphasis. The classical political theory also lays emphasis on order, very much on order. Order, law and order, stability. Okay, that this is very, very sacrosanct. You cannot disturb that. And this anarchy, revolution, these things will be very, very kind of derogatory terms for classical political theorists, because it is what it is emphasizing on harmony, stability, equilibrium, balance, order. So of course revolution and instability and anarchy and conflict would challenge these things. So this is what classical political theory is all about. And it also emphasizes on ethics. It emphasizes a lot on ethics. Like Plato will talk about the ideal state. We'll study that in Western political theory, that Plato will talk about ideal state. And uh, Aristotle will also say that state has to achieve its optimum. And how does state achieve its optimum? When state becomes best. What clan? Ravi, what is clan, please? I did not understand. Plato clan. I don't know. Don't know. He was, of course, from a noble family. Alexander was a prince of Macedonia. Clan, I don't know. Where does clan come here? He has talked about racial purity. Okay, that only kings. We'll see that in Western political thought. Not like that, sir. Then Aditya, I think, which order? Can you please rephrase this? Okay, you can ask after the I end everything. So that is what this classical political theorist. When I say classical political theorists, you think of Plato and Aristotle. That's it. So these two will suffice, because अच्छा, the guru disciple order. Okay, okay. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Alexander. And Aristotle, this guy, Plato, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Alexander. This Aristotle is a contemporary of Chanakya, Kautilya, and whose disciple will be Chandragupta Maurya. And Chandragupta Maurya will defeat the successor of Alexander. Can you tell me the name? Anyone? Good, Krishna. Seleucus Nicator. And then the Mauryan Empire will extend till Kandhar, Baluchistan, and Herat. Good. Now, second thing you see, classical political theory we have seen, modern political theory dominated by science and empiricism. I told you yesterday what is empiricism. Sense organs tell us this is true. Whatever your sensory organs tell us, you hear, you feel, you see, you touch, you taste, and you believe it to be true. Okay, so science and empiricism, because this is a post-Renaissance approach. Renaissance will, ruin the old orders. It will devastate. It will destroy the old and archaic orders, medieval and ancient, because people will, start asking so many questions that the orders will tend to collapse under the burden of their own contradictions. So then there will become science. Science will be emphasized. And why should I trust what the church or the king tells me? I'll question, I'll experience, and I'll find a truth for myself. This is what empiricism is. I'll experience it, only then I'll say. So, like uh, a particular teacher teaches very good, and you are told so. And if you are told so, and if you follow it, irrespective of how the teacher teaches, it's not empiricism. But when you take the class and you feel good that yes, yes, we have understood everything, then you were right that he teaches good. That is empiricism. Your sense organs tell you, right? So again, science again, logical conclusions, algorithmic approach. So old order, ethical and status quoist order will be replaced by science and empiricism in modern political theory. There will be a lot of, all the writers of those times, right from John Locke to Berkeley to Hume to Rousseau, all of them will question the authority. They will ask people to question, they will ask people to rebel. They will do everything from 15th to 16th century. There will be a kind of plethora of such writers emerging, and Voltaire, Rousseau, all these people. So facts and data will replace belief. Okay, facts and data will replace belief, and philosophical interpretations will be replaced with analytical explanations. what is philosophy? My philosophy would be different from yours. High element of subjectivity involved. There will be analytical explanation. What is analysis? What is analytical? You tend to divide the question into many small parts and you examine every part. Then you arrive at a summary, point by point, bit by bit. Like we are following an analytical process. Right? You are asked to study NCRTs, then you are asked to study stage 2 of your preparation has started, as Ramsar wrote in the group that day. So this is analytical, one step at a time, analyzing every. You cannot study everything at one go. So let us analyze our study phase and then progress accordingly. So this will happen in modern political thought, that philosophical interpretations will be replaced by analytical explanations, and procedure will be more important than purpose. What is to be done, rather how it is to be done, will be more important. And facts, facts will be separate from values. Facts are facts. They don't care for your values. Okay. Facts are value neutral. Facts do not care for your emotions. That's why when I put facts in front of some people, they get hurt. Like, why are you saying this? I'm not saying this. These are the point facts. Prove it wrong. Right? So methodology, interdisciplinary synthesis will be achieved now. All these things were lacking in classical political theory. This we will see in a modern political theory. See, for the moment, I hope no one is trying to write anything. I'm right. Or are you trying to jot down whatever I'm speaking? No, don't write, please, please. You will be wasting your, I want you to understand these things. Yeah? Please try to understand. Please try to understand. Uh, these slides will be yours. These slides will be yours. And whatever explanation I gave here regarding classical and modern, that will be given to you in the form of PDF. Okay. So please, maximum focus should be on understanding. Maximum focus should be on understanding. This is not a static subject. If you do not understand the theory, you will never be able to do well in this subject. And theory, I told you how the theory will be utilized in different other parts of this paper, even in your international relations, even in your IGP. So please focus on understanding. The writing part, I don't understand why students always want to write a lot. You will be given the literature, don't worry about that. So modern political thought, we see a replacement from classical political thought. Facts will come, values will take a backseat, and research will be there. That's how you arrive at fact. Status quo will be changed. So when there will be so much of science and empiricist emphasis, of course, status quo will be changed. Status quo can survive only when high priority is given to value and ethics. When you talk about sense organs experience, that is empiricism, when you talk about scientific explanation, when you tend to become rational and logical, then of course status quo will be devastated. Correct? So this is how modern political theory differs from classic political theory. Now you see, contemporary political theory, it's an amalgamation of both, because it was felt that man is a social animal. Man cannot every time go with reason and logic and science. No, that will make us very, very mechanical. There has to be values and ethics in life. So that will talk about an amalgamation, a combination of both these things. So that is what contemporary political theory, because people until this time has seen the merits and demerits of both, right? They have seen the merits and demerits of both classical and modern. So here they will say that let us not only view history as a political thought, history is not only a political thought, but also try to examine the significance, why certain things have undergone certain changes, and why along with how the values have changed. This society was laying emphasis on certain value. After that, 200 years or 500 years down the line, the formation of society changed and values also changed. So conceptual analysis will still be there, and political theory here will be a kind of systematic reflection. What is going on in society is reflected back upon the theory. So it will actually revitalize both classical and modern political thoughts. Did you understand this? You will give in the PDF, don't worry. Whatever I've said will be made available to you. The evolution of political theory, all of you aware with it now? what is classical, what is modern, what is contemporary. Any questions here? Shall I move or you have any question? Timeline of what? Sam, where is the timeline here? Of theories. Are classic is ancient and medieval, modern is contemporary, post Renaissance. Contemporary is the time that we are living in. No, Suman, no, 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 no. It's not a form of dictatorship. We have not seen what is dictatorship, so please hold your horses. We will see dictatorship when we will cover fascism, FASCISM. Then we will see what is dictatorship. There are many myths floating around the term fascism. I'll bust these myths when we'll study political ideologies. It's not a form of dictatorship. Sumit. Which present theory are you talking about? There is no one present theory, Santosh. We have still not seen which political theory is being followed because there is no one. There are more than one theories. And of course, they are contemporary. Until now, what we have seen, what is political theory? What are the different aspects and dimensions of political theory? I'll explain it, Vishnu. And what are, again, the different kind of evolutionary stage from classical to modern to contemporary. I'll explain it. I have to cover something here. So I'll give you time to ask this question. Vishnu, I'll explain what is empiricism with examples. For now, I have to move. Resurgence. This was the thing that I wanted to explain to all of you. This question came in 2019, last year for 10 marks. Okay. So resurgence of political theory. And as I told you in 2018, they have asked that political theory is dead. That political theory has been, just let me see just 1 minute. Yes, in 18 they have asked decline of political theory. And in 19 they are asking resurgence. So see how in 1 year theory is resurging. Now let us try to understand what should we write here. Resurgence in political theory that took place after the Second World War assumed various shapes and manifestations, and the present space cannot comprise them all. It cannot be filled here, right? That's why I've written it. Because we have to revisit this, we have to study about end of ideology or end of philosophy, end of this ideology debate, which was pioneered by, anyone can give me the name of the political scientist who talked about end of ideology debate? The name is Francis Fukuyama. Okay, go on Google and write end of ideology or end of history and you will know. But then it will take you, it's a very long essay, so don't read it for now. Someday I will ask you to read some parts. Okay, so this is what Fukuyama says. And it happened after the end of Second World War. So here we are seeing that it happens after the Second World War. Okay, Second World War is over 1945, and then they are talking about resurgence of political theory. In the second half of 20th century, some scholars announced the decline of political theory. Yes, the end of ideology debate that was given by Francis Fukuyama. It was overplay of values, principle, and history in political theory that provoked these scholars to pronounce the demise. See, again, I'm not always in favor of, I told you yesterday also that don't attempt to write questions from the very first day. But since I was teaching political theory today, that's why I took this question. These lines would have conveyed to you that there are certain things that you need to understand, because they don't ask in your exam. Please try to understand, they do not ask question chapter wise. It's not your school or college unit test. One question will involve more than one discipline of your subject. In political theory, you do not read any book you pick up. You do not read about political, this Francis Fukuyama and end of ideology. But this is how political theories have evolved over a period of time. Okay, so just try to get the essence, because we have to revisit this end of ideology debate. In ideology, we'll study ideology also. So these people, what happened after Second World War, and especially after the uh, fall of Soviet Union, that they started saying that liberalism and capitalism has triumphed over communism and conservatism, and this victory is final and decisive. Socialism and communism has lost, capitalism and liberalism has won, and nothing new is going to happen now. Whatever happened now will be a repetition. Although Fukuyama last year has corrected his own theory and he has said, but then we'll not talk about it right now. So end of ideology debate came. There is a political theory that provoke you are to that it's everything is dead. Everything now, whatever will happen will be a repetition of earlier things. Nothing new is going to emerge. This was what the question was, that demise of political theory. Now, some people reacted very sharply to this. That how can you say that this has happened? There is this institute in USA, the Rockefeller Institute and the Harvard Economist. They all, they dedicated a lot of research and hard work to dismiss that political theory has died. And they reacted very sharply to these people. And they finally said that Alfred Coburn took this criticism further and argued that political theory has ceased to develop and it is no longer a progressive science. This is what the end of ideology is. But there was a sharp reaction to this as well, which said Dante Gremino, Issa Berlin, again you will study about Issa Berlin in detail. David Milner argued that the political theory is never dead. It can never be dead. It is evolving in newer forms with newer engagements. Just because you are not able to recognize the new forms, you cannot say that political theory is dead. Okay. Now, what are these newer engagements? Someone asked me, modern theory is contemporary one. So here is where the answer is that newer engagements, here are the newer engagements. There was this 1962 article by Berlin that does political theory still exist? And Berlin too refuted all the points raised by the advocates of decline and argued that political theory can never see its end. It will never end. It will again, like a phoenix bird who can rise away from its own ashes. This is what political theory is. Decline versus revival debate is rooted in the broader conclusion that the traditional method of analyzing political phenomena is not adequate. Your tools are to be blamed, not the theory. And novel techniques and tools are needed. Now, the answer to the question, which theory are we following? Okay, the answer is we are following what emerged after the end of ideology debate with novel techniques and adequate new phenomena. And what are these phenomena? Pluralist theory. One thing cannot be right, there can be more than one way of saying it. Rawls normative theory and behavioralism. This is what we are mostly observing around us. So this is all I had to discuss with you. Tomorrow we'll start with these things where we have left. And now you can ask your question. Now, empiricism was the question. Who asked this? Empiricism, I guess someone asked it, right? Experience, experiment and experience. Experience is the valid source of knowledge. Vishnu, experience is the valid source of knowledge. Whatever you are experienced is the only truth, nothing else. And how do you experience? Through your organs? You experience it. You have to experience it to say it is true. That's empiricism. There are many isms. Okay, there are many isms. Anirudh, let us not decide whether Fukuyama said was because last year he himself said he was wrong. Why are you defending him still? Okay, last year he himself said that I was wrong. So no point defending him. And let us understand what he actually said. Let us study those things in detail. Then we can of course take a call. And he himself has revisited his theory. So wait for it. Too quick to judge him right now. Anything more? Any other questions here? So tomorrow we'll complete political theory. We'll see more questions from main exam. And Ravi, if you don't write the name of writer and thinkers while quoting a theory that would pass as your own theory or quote, what would the examiner feel that Ravi has written this? And Ravi writing something and Fukuyama writing something. You understand the difference? When you quote a thinker correctly, it increases the weightage of your answer. Don't worry about how we will remember. I'll repeat them so many times that you will remember everything. Yes, you have to remember the names. And I told you, I'll repeat these things so many times that you will remember it. And of course, you will get the slides and the PDFs. So nothing to worry about. If there's a problem, if you do not understand it, feel free to ask me. Anything else? Why Fukuyama is saying end of ideology? If you understand it, you don't have to ratta it. That's why I said you need to understand. You don't have to ratta here. So tomorrow we'll conclude this political theory. We'll see more questions that have been asked in your main exam. Please revisit these slides and PDF you will get once I'll complete this topic. Okay. And again, a very gentle reminder. And if you don't follow it, it will not be so gentle all the time. Please do not refer to multiple sources. Do not refer to multiple sources. I'm telling you, have faith, read these things, read the PDF that will be given at the end of the topic, see previous year question. You will find yourself in a very comfortable position. Do not try to be a scholar or an expert. Do not download, do not buy books. Don't do that. Do not make it tough for yourself. That's it. It's a simple thing. Let us keep it simple. Okay, we'll meet tomorrow. Thanks to all of you for bearing with me. Study hard, take good care of yourself.